Ireland enjoys one of the most thriving economies in Europe. 20 years ago, this was not the picture.
The Irish economy by the 1980s was in a deep crisis of rising debt, falling real living standards, and attempts by government to fix this by raising taxation. The result was a severe crisis of unemployment and of the public finances, in which each group's attempt to defend its own interest was simply subtracting from the sum total of economic performance.
All of the groupings involved in Irish society worked together to try and tackle that debt crisis. And I suppose out of that we learned that it was possible for the government, for the employers, for the unions and the NGOs to work together on issues without themselves giving up their ultimate social vision, that they could actually work together in a problem-solving way to tackle national important issues that were affecting this country. Well, the process works at national level by the government, the trade unions, the employers and the NGOs coming together to try and put together an overall strategy, setting out what should be the priorities that Ireland should pursue, say, over the next 3 to 4 years, and deliver it not just at national level, but also at local level. So the people who are closest to the problem are the ones that are asked to try and implement the solution.
The north side of Dublin was a black spot, with more than 50% unemployment, children not starting school, and youth leaving before they'd finished. A Northside partnership was formed to translate the national strategy to the local level. Aidan Flaherty was the founding director of this partnership.
The Northside partnership, first of all, it should be understood that it's made up of a number of very important sort of groupings. We have my own grouping, the employers, the trade unions, and I guess they're often seen together in many aspects of doing business on a daily basis. But the important thing about this was that it also included the state agencies, people who had a responsibility to deal with social issues in the particular area, and most importantly of all for me, the community groups themselves from within the community in which we're operating. The degree to which they were in there trying to help themselves became a very powerful motivating factor for the rest of us who are in there to help them, because it is very easy to help people who actually want to help themselves. Our involvement stretched over a broad number of inputs. I mean, obviously, the easy one for anybody to think about is sort of contributing money. But I think there are things that are far more important than the cash contributions. Our involvement on the board itself in structuring policy, our involvement in the effort to try and create employment in the area through the enterprise subgroups, our involvement in terms of creating work experience within our business for people who were unemployed at that time.
There were some people who required a special work environment, so the Northside Partnership set up a factory. Here, people were given their very first paid job. In Western Europe, some bored teenagers steal cars to go joyriding. The partnership decided to build on this interest in cars by developing a special training course.
This course here is funded by the Joyriding Task Force of Darndale. At the moment, I have 11 lads working away. I have 4 lads out on work experience. It's taken off very, very fast.
Within 6 months, 9 of the boys had found full-time work. Some needed help even earlier.
Stand over there and have your juice. Stand there and have your juice.
A breakfast club was created to encourage young children to come to school.
I think what is amazing in relation to all the things that we've done here in the partnership, tackling unemployment or education disadvantage, is there is the simple things that work.
The biggest success of the partnership has undoubtedly been employment. Ireland has increased its employment by 54% since 1990, which is really quite remarkable. And in many ways, the partnership approach allowed some of Ireland's longer-term strategies, such as inward investment and investment in education, allowed them to finally succeed.
since issues nowadays are much more complex, that it's very important to involve the people who are affected by the problem you're trying to address, but also the people who have to deliver the solutions, and deliver the solutions at the lowest possible level. And I think that's the way that democracy will work in future.
I mean, we've tried all sorts of other systems. We've tried to give it to a particular family, and it hasn't really worked, and that's what kings were all about. We've tried to spread it out among larger privileged groups of people, nobility, and that hasn't worked very well. We've given it to wise men and to the army, and that hasn't worked. Where it's really worked is where the people basically are forced to come to some consensus about what are the best measures, and giving them space to discuss it. So it's not to accept their first answers, but give them time to think it out, debate it, be aware of all the issues.
I don't know if this is democracy. I'm not an expert on that. What I know is that this is good accountability, it's good sense, and maybe that's democracy.
So, you know, really, at the end of the day, it's really up to the governments to make up their mind, to decide whether they want to respect the more participatory model or to invite confrontation, to invite violence, and perhaps ultimately the dismantling of the very democratic system.